Hello, I'm Jochen Schleese, founder of Saddlefit for Life. Today we talk about the fifth webinar of the six-part web series, The Fundamental of Saddle Fit, and it is static and the dynamic saddle fitting. Well, a saddle fitting statically may not actually fit dynamically in movement when the rider is riding in the saddle. And I don't know about you folks, but I would like my saddle to fit when the horse is actually moving, not just in the barn. So many saddle fitters focus only on the static fit while ignoring or not knowing how to actually fit dynamically to the horse and rider. So prime example here is the saddle fitting statical only. Dynamic fit was ignored, resulting in a disaster during the horse's movement. Check out how far the girth is from the elbow, where his leg is, and the behavior of the horse. This saddle had slid back 8 inches and was pressing in the horse's loins during the Nations Cup in the Great Britain. So many independent saddle fitters have a favorite saddle manufacturer due to cost, profit, adjustability, and available selection, but promote themselves as fitters for all types of saddle brands. In the end, the horse cares only if the saddle fits. Always look at the eyes and the ears. And as I said, I don't know about you folks, but for me, the saddle has to fit when I ride my horse. Okay, when the saddle fitter says the saddle fits great in the aisle, and look how nice it fits here in the angle and in the saddle, and how nice the stuffing is. But when I ride, my horse is really, really angry and refusing. So the expectation and knowledge are changing finally because of the Saddle Fit for Life Academy, and this is why it's often referred to the pinnacle of saddle fit. As explained in our first webinar, saddle fit perception. Remember, the equestrian industry has no regulation and a ton of misleading information to self-serve each individual interest, right? I showed it to you in the 8 common saddle fit myths. 7 of those myths are based on misleading information regarding proper static saddle fit and unable to accommodate the proper dynamic saddle fit. So what does static and dynamic saddle fitting mean? Saddle fitting is an ongoing process to continue to align horses' horizontal spine with the human's vertical spine without causing discomfort to horse and rider doing riding, not just standing, as both while naturally constantly changing their conformation over time. So all these factors changes the fit. It's the riders that approve, the horses change in age, condition, shoeing chiropractic, the saddle flocking shifts, and so on and so forth. To align the horse's horizontal spine with the human spine for the riding assessment is so important. You need to determine the balance point for both beings. That's key. That was part of my pre-webinar when I talked about mapping out the horse. To investigate the soundness and dimensions of the saddle. You got to figure out the saddle. What does the saddle dimension look? Look, there's so many points we need to measure on the saddle before I even put the saddle static on the horse. So why is that so important? I mean, this is going back from Xenophon, Greek militarists who taught that 2,500 years ago, how to maintain the well-being to the animals. It's very important how to ride correctly. And what do the riders at the director of the Spanish riding school say? Horses will suffer pain if the saddle doesn't fit the rider. So we need to fit the saddle to the horse and to the rider. If we select an anatomically correct saddle to the male or female, we need to understand big factors here. We talked about this in our second seminar when I talked about the rider's pain. 2 people here, they look identical, except one is female, one is male. Look at the impact. I put the red dots on the cast where the female seat bones are and the pubic symphysis much lower on the female and the guy's. Guy's pubic symphysis doesn't even touch. And look at how far back his seat bones are. So the guy's pelvis, you can see in the center of the slide here, how long the tailbone is, how short the tailbone is on the lady. Then you see the pelvis axis. So it's absolutely crucial. These are fundamental facts. If you ignore it, in the dynamic saddle fitting, it will not work. Here's the classic of all of them. Here you see a woman sitting in a male saddle. On the brown saddle, you see no saddle flap behind her thigh, and shoulder, hips, and heels on the left picture, not aligned, right? Just like the lady on the horse. The perpendicular line is not there. So don't ignore the importance of an anatomically appropriate saddle. It's not just smoke and mirrors, it's facts. If you do choose the right anatomically correct saddle for the rider, and you measure the rider and the horse, you start off with getting a soft, quiet rider. Here you see the rider sit shoulder, hips, and heels, and the horse can easily lift the back. Why is it so important to check the saddle? Look at all these items. We need to check the angle, the width. All these points have to be checked on the saddle before I even put it on the horse. Okay. Then I measure the rider. Why do I need to measure the rider? Well, I just showed you. There's all these different factors, 15 factors, which play a massive role for the horse to be comfortable while everything is moving, which we call dynamic fit. Obviously, we need to also look into it. Hey, how does the horse look? What's the current situation? Veterinarian, farrier, what does the exterior look like? Is there any other issues? Then you measure the horse. There are so many measurements, but please, whatever saddle fitter you choose, make sure they have a level or a laser. With technologies today, it's so easy to get it. Without a level or a laser, it's all hocus pocus. It means nothing. You need to know the horizontal axis and the vertical axis of the horse. Why? Because there's many horses who are ridden way too early while the skeleton still forms, and there are a lot of horses with deformity in the bones and muscle, and you're trying to fit a saddle to it. We also have the same with riders. Many riders are not 100% even. That's why you measure them. While the likelihood is that the horse is not 100% symmetric and the rider is not 100% symmetric, here's the beautiful part. The saddle, the interface, can align both without hurting the one or the other being. A common picture here on this bottom left, you see the horse with the bigger left shoulder, mane going to the right. 7 out of 10 horses are like that. If I do not have the sex-appropriate saddle on that horse, in other words, anatomically correct saddle for the rider, and I do not have measured the saddle correctly with the level, this is never going to work in motion. So I also like to know that where the growth stage of the horse is, like I explained that in the previous. And then I check the saddle statically. What am I doing here? I'm looking at all these points, the length, the tree angle, the tree width, the billets alignment. Look at all these points. Okay, that's static only. And then when I go to the horse, I like to see the horse being ridden. I want to see the horse on the lunge line first or ridden in their current saddle. And the saddle most likely leaves a dust pattern like you see here. Clearly on the top right, you see a lot of dust accumulating. That means the saddle was bridging. On the bottom, you can see how the saddle was shifting. You see the dust pattern diagonal on the horse's back. So a decision after the dynamic saddle fitting, you have 3 choices. You can ignore what you learned and carry on as is, or buy a new horse, or fix your saddle to the situation. Once I have measured the horse, the rider, evaluate how the saddle fits the rider, then I measured and evaluated how the saddle sits static and dynamically, I then can make a decision, hey, what can I do? Just stuffing won't do the trick. You're spending so much money. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's like you're taking a farrier and says, okay, just trim his hoof and put the old shoe back on. Well, no hoof shoer does that. But often people do that and just stuff the saddle and think you fixed the problem. All right. So a real saddle fitting has to have all these 12 adjustable points. Without adjusting all these points right there on side, 99% the dynamic saddle fitting will fail. And that's why many saddle fitters do not do dynamic saddle fitting. They just do the static, says, yeah, it fits, and then they leave. They don't even watch you ride before or after. Okay, so unless your saddle can do all these 12 fits, it's not going to work, because deep down, we all want to do the best for the horse. Right? Saddle fitting is an ongoing process, and we need to align the two beings. Saddle fit does not exist in nature because why? They're in herds, they run around, and they walk 20 miles a day, and they graze 17 hours. So when we have them in captivity, there's most of the time one leg forward, and they're developed not even. So please, Find a saddle fitter who can explain you the difference between the dynamic and static saddle fitting, so he can evaluate your skill, he can watch you ride, he can see if the perpendicular line is there, and he can see if you avoid the balance point. I can share this with you because I have spent my last 45 years measuring 260,000 horses, met a lot of professors. You can also educate yourself from all these professors, written books, and veterinarians to protect you and your horse from saddle fitters who don't understand. You can go as far as getting technology like Apple Watches for horses, where you can actually measure the cadence, their symmetry, and so on and so forth. So if you're eager to expand your knowledge and find a solution to your saddle fit question, look no further. Our evidence-based saddle fit education offers comprehensive online course designed to deepen your understanding of anatomically correct saddle fit for you and your horse. So check us out at saddlefitforlifeacademy.com. Thanks very much, and I see you at the next webinar.
For more free educational content, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. Or if you're interested in furthering your education beyond free content, we'd love to chat with you. You can book a call with one of our instructors to learn more about our courses. We offer evidence-based saddle fit education that is online and self-paced, so you can fit it to your own schedule. And we have different courses both for horse owners and riders, as well as for equine professionals, and continuing professional development credit for veterinarians as well. I can't wait to see you in the next video, or maybe even welcome you to the Saddle Fit for Life Academy permanently.